Hello, this is Salvatore Vinciguerra. Welcome to this video on the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site in Plains, Georgia. If you want to learn about our 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and his wife, former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, then Plains, Georgia is the place for you to visit. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the Plains High School Museum and Visitor Center, the Carter Boyhood Farm. I'm going to give you a glimpse of the Carter compound from the outside where he currently lives with the Secret Service gate and everything. And then I'm going to be visiting the Plains Depot. This is where our 39th President of the United States had his campaign headquarters. Plains High School opened in 1921 and served students until 1979. Two of its most notable graduates include President Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Smith Carter. Plains High School now serves as the Museum and Education Center of the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. Walking through this museum was very inspiring for me. As an educator, this is like taking a step back in time and trying to imagine how both students learned and teachers taught back when the school was open in Plains, Georgia. Look at this beautifully restored auditorium with the wooden seats and even the rafters. It's just amazing to see this site, as this is where our 39th president would have made some of his first campaign speeches in high school. In the next few exhibits at the museum, you get to see some of the artifacts from Jimmy Carter from his boyhood home. And there are all different kinds of artifacts in here that have been brought here to be preserved, to continue to share with you his life and also some of his political career. James Earl Carter Jr. was born on October 1st, 1924 at the Wise Sanitarium, now the Lillian G. Carter Nursing Home in Plains, Georgia, a hospital where his mother was employed as a registered nurse. Did you know that Jimmy Carter was the first U.S. president to be born in a hospital? Jimmy Carter served in the U.S. Navy, was a Georgia senator from 1963 to 1967, and was the governor of the state of Georgia from 1971 to 1975. He became the 39th President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. Post-presidency, Jimmy Carter has done more than any other president of the United States in this period of time. He founded the Carter Center in 1982, which is a non-governmental and non-profit organization with the purpose of advancing human rights and alleviating human suffering, including helping to improve the quality of life for people in more than 80 countries. He's also helped assist many presidents of the United States with foreign policy and diplomatic relations of the United States. And a lot of people may know Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalynn as well known as their work for the volunteers with Habitat for Humanity, a Georgia-based philanthropy that helps low-income working people around the world to build and buy their own homes and access clean water. One of the neatest things to see on this particular tour is this beautiful hand-carved desk. And it is quite daunting to see this desk in person and also to get to be able to sit behind it and feel what it's like to be the 39th President of the United States. After you get your picture taken at Jimmy Carter's desk, don't forget to check out his Nobel Peace Prize, which he won in 2002. Jimmy Carter is the earliest serving living former president since the death of Gerald Ford in 2006, became the oldest to ever attend a presidential inauguration in 2017 at age 92, and the first to live to the 40th anniversary of their own. 2 years later, on March 22, 2019, he gained the distinction of being the nation's longest living president when he surpassed the lifespan of George H.W. Bush, who was 94 years, 171 days of age when he died in November of 2018. Both men were born in 1924. On October 1st, 2019, Jimmy Carter became the first U.S. president to live to the age of 95, and at the filming of this video and also the posting of this video, he is still alive today. As you can see in this video, I'm already down the road. I'm visiting Jimmy Carter's boyhood home, and this is Jimmy Carter's horse out front. Some of the tours of this house may start in the front of it, but instead I'm going to go to the back of the house because this is where the parking lot is, and this is also where Rosalynn has her beautiful butterfly garden. If you have the opportunity to visit the boyhood home early enough in the morning, you may actually get to see Jimmy Carter's granddaughter taking care of the property. She's very shy, but I did say hello to her early that morning as I was visiting the butterfly garden in the back of the house. Also, the ranger from the national park did mention that Rosalynn and Jimmy do walk in the areas of their former high school and also the downtown area, and the former president still teaches Sunday school on Sundays, so make sure that if you're visiting Plains, Georgia, that you plan your trip out well. But if you want to see the former president preach in church, you're going to have to stand in line for about 3 hours and get there at the crack of dawn in order to get a glimpse of the former president of the United States. Now I'm going to read to you a poem that Jimmy Carter wrote in 1995. It's called Always a Reckoning. It reflects his childhood impression that in his father's mind, everything on the farm had to pay its own way. The title is a phrase Jimmy often heard his father say. Always a reckoning. I had a pony then that lacked a way to work and pay her way, except that every year or two, Lady had a colt we sold, but still for less than what was due to buy the fodder, hay, and corn. She ate at times she couldn't be on pasture. Neither feed nor colts meant all that much that I could see, but still there was a thing about a creature staying on our place that none of us could eat or plow, did not give eggs, or even chase a fox or a rabbit that was sure to rifle my father. We all knew that Lady's giving me a ride paid some on her debt in lieu of other ways, but there would be some times I didn't get around to riding in my off-work hours, and I was sure when Daddy frowned at some mistake I might have made, he would be asking when he could, "How long since you rode, Lady?" This is the inside of the Earl and Lillian Carter home where Jimmy Carter grew up. James Earl Carter Sr. and his family moved into this middle-class, rural dwelling as its second owners in 1928, 6 years after the home had been built. Heating was accomplished by fireplaces and wood stoves. Initially, there was no running water and electricity was unavailable until 1938. Earl Carter sold the farm to T.R. Downer in 1949. The Downer family owned the property until 1994 when the National Park Service purchased it. The home is restored to its 1930s appearance before it had electricity. Earl and Lillian Carter and their 4 children, Jimmy, Gloria, Ruth, and Billy, lived here. It's interesting to note that while visiting inside of the house, that the furnishings inside the home did not belong to the Carter family. In fact, they are period reproductions of the 1930s era and are similar to what the Carters would have owned. You are allowed to take flash and video photography inside of the house. This is the breakfast room. The family enjoyed most of their meals in this less formal eating area. Blocks of ice for the ice box were delivered from town regularly to help preserve perishable items. Family meals were usually very quiet. Miss Lillian encouraged her family to read, even at meal times, so you would have seen the children at the table engrossed in books and magazines. Now we're going to be headed towards the living room, which is at the front of the house. Coming in this room from school each day, the children stopped by the black desk, which they had nicknamed Mother. Their mother's nursing career kept her frequently away from home. She would write down chores for the children and leave their to-do list on the desk. The family gathered in this room following the evening meal. Earl Carter prepared his Sunday school lesson and read the newspaper by oil lamp. When he got out his favorite chair, the children were quick to check the chair for change that might have been slipped out of his pockets. If you notice that inside of the house there was a tennis racket inside of one of the bedrooms. And that's because President Jimmy Carter's lifelong love of tennis began with his frequent fierce contests with his father on this Georgia clay court. Jimmy Carter wrote about his father in 1975, "My father was an excellent tennis player. I could never beat my father. He had a wicked sliced ball which barely bounded at all on the relatively soft dirt court." Now let's have the former president talk about the Carter store.
We had a store, what we call a commissary on the farm, which was quite common in rural communities because they provided the basic necessities that had to be bought by the workers and by our family as well. What happened usually was that the purchases were on credit and payment for the different items were made on payday or sometimes even at the end of the season when the crops were harvested. The stores were convenient for 3 reasons. One, they were close by, and most of the transportation was on foot. Secondly, the landowner, the larger ones, owned the store in order to make a profit on items sold. And third, the people who lived on the farm or nearby quite often had no credit rating in town, whereas the landowner that owned the store would know them, and if they wanted to buy a pair of shoes or a shirt or some tobacco, they didn't have to worry about credit because they had ready credit, since the landowner knew them well. And since the landowner knew that when he paid them for their work, he could collect the bill. This store was not kept open all the time, but it was open all day Saturday because that was the day for major purchases. That was the day when the workers were paid and when they paid off what they owed. fields during meal times. So almost every time I ever sat down at a meal, someone knocked on the back door and wanted to make a purchase from the store. My daddy would throw the keys across the table to me. I would get up and miss part of the meal, walk out to the store, unlock it, sell 5 cents worth of chewing tobacco or a bottle of castor oil or 2 pounds of sugar, make a ticket showing that the person had bought something on credit, lock the store back up, and go back to our meal. I hardly ever remember going to an entire meal without having to be interrupted to go to the store and open it to make a sale.
This is the Carter family garden. Earl Carter always had a garden to add variety to the family meals. A community sweet potato garden was also planted and shared amongst the residents who lived nearby. This garden was strictly for the Carter family's use, although the farm supervisor, Jack Clark, was responsible for its planting and upkeep. Crops were shared when there were some to share. This is the Blacksmith Shop. This is a quote by Jimmy Carter from 1975. Our blacksmith shop was a small building with a dirt floor. The forge and anvil, drill press, and emery wheel were used daily to repair farm tools and sometimes to make them. Our horses and mules were shod there, and our plow points sharpened. A few of us did this work routinely, but Daddy handled the more difficult jobs. Now we're going to take a look at the milking barn. Between 8 and 12 cows were milked here each day, depending upon the season and how many were giving fresh milk. This was Jack Clark's job, but his wife Rachel assisted him in the morning and Jimmy helped after school in the afternoons. None of the milk was ever wasted. From some of it, cream was separated, which Earl Carter sold to the Swanee store in Plains. The leftover milk, called Blue John, was fed to the calves and pigs. Several gallons a day were consumed by the Carter family as sweet milk, butter, and buttermilk. Earl had a good business of making small bottles of vanilla and chocolate milk drinks, which he would deliver to grocery stores and service stations in the area to be sold for 5 cents each. He would pick up the unsold ones each week to be fed to the hogs. Here at the barn, the day started early. During the season, all the workers arose each morning at 4 a.m. Wakened by the ringing of a large farm bell, we would go to the barn and catch the mules by lantern light, put the plow stock, seed, fertilizer, and other supplies on the wagons, and drive out to the field where we would be working that day, and would wait for it to be light enough to cultivate. This is the home of Tyler Jack Clark and Rachel Clark. Rural tenant homes for black and white farm families were built in the late 1800s and early 1900s and basically were 2 or 3 bedroom frame buildings with steep gable roofs. A wall divided the house into a living room that served also as a bedroom and a kitchen dining room, which could also be used for sleeping. As I'm giving you a tour of the home, please look at the walls, as you're going to see the clapboard siding was the only barrier to the outside heat, cold wind, and rain, so occupants covered the inside of these boards with old newspapers pasted with a white mixture of flour and water. And this is very typical of a lot of other people's homes. If you looked at the home of Dolly Parton and also Loretta Lynn, they had very similar homes that looked like this with the newspaper and then the clapboard siding that you see there. This is what Jimmy Carter said of the Clarks who lived in this house. The Clarks' house was the one that I knew most intimately because I stayed there whenever my parents were away. Except in my own room, this is where I felt most at home. My own life was affected most profoundly by Jack and Rachel. Without young children of their own to care for, they seemed to enjoy having me with them. The young Jimmy Carter relished sharing all chores around the barn with Jack Clark, who was glad for the help. Earl Carter encouraged this partnership, knowing it was the best way for his son Jimmy to learn about farm life. Rachel Clark also had a very profound impact upon Jimmy, as she had a very strong religious faith, and local residents remember her frequent words of encouragement for young children to behave themselves and to do what is right. On my journey back to town, you have to look very carefully to find the present-day Carter family home. It's hidden behind these gates. I literally had to stop the car in the middle of the street to take these pictures to get a glimpse of what the home would look like from the outside. And if you look to the right, there is the Secret Service gate, so you can't really go inside. Also across the street, but on the same property, is Rosalynn's Butterfly Garden. It's a part of her Butterfly Garden Trail. And maybe if you want to check out this particular garden, what you'd have to do is you'd have to stop somewhere, pull over, and maybe park in a safe place, so maybe you don't get a ticket, so that you can walk down to the garden and just check it out from the outside without actually going inside of the property. This is the historic train depot building where former President Jimmy Carter, as a candidate, campaigned here and hosted fundraisers and opened up a campaign office. I thought it was great that they had this old TV sitting here inside of the museum, and it actually has a little film that goes over the presidency of Jimmy Carter. But this is the way most people back in the 70s and 80s got their information, from a TV that looked very similar to this. This train depot is still in use today, as they use it for tourists and special events. Especially during holidays, they will have certain trains that will run here, and you can catch it either at this depot or maybe at the President's house, or even at the Veterans Memorial State Park, which is not too far away. I would highly suggest that on your tour through Plains, Georgia, that you stop in this downtown area. I stopped here during the 4th of July one summer, and it was just extraordinary how nice the people were. There's antique shops, there's also a local restaurant, and it's a great place to just meet the locals, and some of them actually do know Jimmy Carter very well and can tell little stories about him. Not too far away is the Jimmy Carter Regional Airport. It's a very small airport, but this is where Lindbergh's first solo flight of the Lone Eagle first flew in May of 1923. This is Salvatore Vinciguerra. Thank you for watching this video on the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site in Plains, Georgia. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to this channel, and have a great day. Thank you.